Okay, so that we move on to the next, which is the, I believe, the panel of two witnesses, and there's an issue to be discussed about as I understand it, the relevance of that.
Correct.
So maybe we'll deal with that now, if that's agreeable.
Sure, thank you very much. So I'll remain seated here, Commissioner.
That's fine. Just identify yourself because it's the same. The reporters have to know who's speaking.
Sure. It's David Mijkowski, counsel for the Ottawa Police Service. We have a very real concern with respect to the witness panel of Chris Deering and Maggie Dingmer. I believe there is now a different name, and I apologize. It's Hope Braun, I believe. Those two individuals, and our concern is essentially one of procedural fairness. Those two individuals were not on the list of witnesses provided by the commission. And so last Friday.
You mean they weren't on the original list?
Correct. And what we found out was on last Friday, October 28th at 12:37 p.m., we received an email from the commission saying that these two individuals would be called as witnesses and attaching two statements from these individuals. No information had been previously provided about these individuals or about the issues that they were going to testify about, which are the how their arrest was handled, nor were there any documents provided by the parties, including the Ottawa Police Service, about the manner of arrest. It appears that both of these individuals, from their statements, are going to give evidence about the circumstances of their arrest by unknown officers. I've been able to determine in one case that it was not an OPS officer, one of them, but we are trying to find out information. These are arrests that took place on February 18th after the invocation of the Emergencies Act. These individuals were not arrested pursuant to the Emergencies Act. They were arrested based on common law powers and the criminal code. And my concerns really are twofold. Firstly, the information we say is not relevant to your mandate under the Act. And the second question is one of procedural fairness. There were over 275 arrests made by the police in that period of February 18th to the 20th. None of the police witnesses were asked specifically about those arrests. No documents were requested. The last police witness who testified in this proceeding was on Wednesday, October 26th. Had those witness statements been provided prior to the completion of the police witnesses, then at the very least we could have asked our witnesses to provide evidence with respect to the arrest plan, with respect to the circumstances of the arrest of those two individuals and the other 275 people who were arrested. I am not faulting Commission Counsel. I understand that the statements were provided to them and they provided them to us immediately after. But it was 2 days after the last witness testified. Those statements were in the those were witnesses who are here represented by counsel. They had an obligation to produce documents. They chose deliberately or otherwise to not present that evidence and not allow me then to respond to it. And it's obvious that some of that information they had beforehand. And in fact, to add to the procedural unfairness, last night we received an email from counsel for the Convoy organizers attaching 7 more videos that also would have existed that were not disclosed. There's no explanation for why the Convoy organizers have not had to follow the same rules as everyone else. Those statements, even if they were relevant, and I don't concede that they are, should have been provided prior to police witnesses testifying. It creates a serious and irreparable breach of procedural fairness to have you left with 2 arrests out of 275, which I am unable to provide evidence in response to, both those specific arrests as well as the arrest plan in general. And there are, I say, 2 possible solutions. The first is to not allow that evidence to be heard. It's not relevant to your mandate. And even if it was, it would be very difficult to draw any conclusion from the evidence of 2 individuals out of 275 arrests when you've heard no evidence about any of the arrests of anyone else or the arrest plans or any explanation of those 2 particular arrests. Alternatively, if you are inclined to allow that panel to testify, including adding new documents that were not on the database and were provided last night, then the OPS must, we say, as a matter of procedural fairness, be allowed the opportunity to call another witness to provide evidence about the arrest plans and the exercise of use of force options in connection with the exercise of police powers, generally and specifically with respect to the scene that the officers encountered on February 18th. You have not heard about what is involved when a public order unit has to exercise tactical options. The commission didn't lead this evidence, nor did we. Similarly, we didn't provide any documents surrounding those arrests. So while my first submission is that you should not allow this evidence, as an alternative, if you are inclined to do so, then I would ask for the opportunity to call evidence so that in fairness, the police witnesses can address what should have been put to them by the convoy organizers and which for some reason was not. Those are my only submissions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other council wish to make submissions?
In response, sir.
Okay, I'm just canvassing first. So you'd like, yes?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. Go ahead.
Should I go ahead? Emily Tamman for
I
the,
take it you're supporting the proposal that or the objection.
that's right. Yes, we agree. Just on behalf of the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses, we share the view conveyed by the Ottawa Police. We understand that the commission is working under difficult constraints and there have been limitations in council's ability to get documents and other evidence to the parties in a timely manner. But in this case, we would agree that there is prejudice and that the evidence, at least as it pertains to the arrests, should not be admitted.
Thank you. Any other?
Yes, Commissioner. Commissioner, it's Chris Diana for the OPP. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, the OPP agrees with the position of our friend, Mr. Michikowski, both the main position or the alternative position. At this point, we don't know if the OPP was involved or not in these incidents. And based on procedural fairness, we should that evidence either should not be permitted or we should have a chance to respond to it. I won't add anything further to the comments by my friend, but the OPP supports that position.
Okay. Any other submissions in support? Okay, and then as I understand it, the convoy organizers are opposing.
We're of course in support of the witnesses testifying and all of the evidence being put before the commission. I'll deal first with the point of law my friend raises about relevance and materiality. With respect to the terms of reference under the order in council in this commission, this commission is to look at the efforts of police and other responders prior to and after the declaration. So with respect to whether or not there was police brutality or misconduct, et cetera, it's relevant and material within the terms of reference. Second, with respect to my friend's allegations of prejudice and it not being fair. With respect, they have not called a single victim or a single eyewitness to any of these purported violent crimes that they're trying to lay at the hands of the protesters as a collective. I don't see how our clients being able to find some witnesses of which they had no control of and which approached them in trying to be able to call actual evidence of actual violence that isn't just an assertion. And in my respectful view, it's relevant and material. If you find that there is some form of prejudice suffered, what my friend is essentially alleging is a violation of the rule of Brown and Dunn. If this was a court, that leaves the court with various remedies, and one is to permit the recalling of a witness in rebuttal. With respect to the rule of Brown and Dunn, I did put issues with respect to arrest, et cetera, directly to Chief Bell, who was in charge of the operation at the time and acting and asking questions about what was actually done. We've now provided the videos of those actual arrests. And I understand that all the police agencies don't want that to be in the public eye. And with respect, I would submit that the public has a right to see these videos. It is in the public interest, and any prejudice is easily repairable by permitting my friends to call a rebuttal witness if they so choose. Subject to any questions, sir, those are my submissions.
Okay, and any other party is opposing the application?
Adam
Okay.
here for the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
Yes.
We support the Freedom Convoy organizers' position, and if I could just make a few points. So first, the terms of reference in the Emergencies Act do require investigating and looking into the appropriateness of the measures that were used. Interim Chief Bell testified that using emergency powers were used to create an exclusion zone, and then they relied on that authority. And so I would expect that these witnesses as arrestees would have evidence that would be relevant to the implementation of that authority. Also, to the extent that my friend made the point that these are but two arrestees of many, we did hear from two Ottawa residents who provided their experiences as examples, and that would then represent a broader class of individuals. So this would also be two arrestees providing their experiences, which would then be emblematic of others in a similar position. And I would just like to add on, my friend, Mr. Honor from the Democracy Fund provided submissions through email. He's not here. I would just briefly read it in just to provide his perspective as well. The Democracy Fund submitted that the evidence of these witnesses is relevant to the Commission's mandate. Specifically, the Commissioner has been directed to examine issues to the extent relevant relating to the efforts of police and other responders prior to and after the declaration. Superintendent Robert Bernier and others testified about the mission statement contained in the OPS operational plan of February 13th, which speaks to enforcing legislation with the, quote, utmost respect to the individual's charter of rights, end quote. There was evidence before the Commission that this plan evolved after the declaration of the Emergencies Act, and there was also evidence that the OPS found the powers available to them under the Emergencies Act to be useful. The Commission should hear evidence from these witnesses as it will speak to how police enforcement was carried out during the state of emergency from a protester perspective. If there are objections as to relevance as the evidence unfolds, those objections can be dealt with orally. If other witnesses need to be recalled, that decision can be made after the hearing of evidence from the witnesses in question. So that was Mr. Honor's submission, which the Justice Center also supports. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner,
With this, any other who are opposing or rather supporting the motion? Okay. Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Commissioner, at some point, Commission Council would like to provide some points of context, but if you're still canvassing, we can wait until that's done.
Okay, you'd like to add something? Yes.
If I may, Commissioner Emily Tammanigan for the record. I just wanted to respond to one point made by my friends regarding the absence of evidence with respect to residents of Ottawa who experienced violence in the convoy. And for the record, would just like to note again that the Ottawa Coalition was very limited in the time that was allocated to tell the story of residents of Ottawa. I would also note that there are many residents who continue to fear for their safety in being identified publicly as opposing the convoy. And with that said, I don't think it's appropriate to infer from the lack of evidence on that point that it didn't happen. And I would also note in response
I
to
think you're getting into argument now.
Well,
We're dealing with whether or not there is relevance to the evidence that's being tendered.
That's right, but one of the bases upon which it's being asserted that it is relevant is that there's been no evidence in relation to violence experienced by residents. And that's something that my friend put to Ms. Leach this morning, and also Mr. Miller noted it in his submission to you just now.
Okay, yes, Mr. Michikowski.
David Michikowski for the Ottawa Police. The one point I want to respond to that has not, with respect, been addressed by my friends, and which is highly problematic, I suggest, is the convoy lawyer has indicated that he put an issue with respect to an arrest to Chief Bell. And that is correct. However, he provided no information, no details, no indication of who it was, when it was. It came out of the air. And what makes that more problematic is that obviously that information was in his possession and there was no documentation provided beforehand. This was sprung after the police witnesses had already testified when we then got these statements. Had the rules been followed, that witness would have seen those statements, would have seen documents. We would have had the opportunity to put in documents and call evidence or ask to call evidence in response. The final point I note is that one of my friends indicated that several of the convoy witness, or several of the coalition's witnesses testified, and that is true. The difference is the rules were followed and everybody knew before they testified what they were going to say. So the convoy organizers had procedural fairness, as did everybody else. In this case, there is a serious denial of procedural fairness, and that's what we say must be addressed. Thank you.
Okay. And Commission Counsel, you wanted to provide some context, and among other things, I don't know what the witnesses are going to say. So to what degree is this one of the witnesses that we saw the video about, or is this something different?
So
Maybe go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off my friend. This is not the witness. That one was also unfair, but we were at least able to get instructions and able to deal with it in cross-examination.
Okay, so that was a red herring then. Okay,
Yeah, I have no objection.
I was worried that this was the same person.
No, I have no objection, by the way, for you reviewing those statements so that you can understand the nature of the evidence.
Okay, Commission Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. John Mather, Commission Counsel. Just 2 points of context. Again, we haven't heard the evidence yet, but Commission Counsel expect that while there may be some evidence given about the arrests, that's not the focus of the evidence. Don't expect it to be the focus of the evidence. The 2 individuals who are being called, Commission Counsel understands, participated in the protests both before and after the invocation of the Emergencies Act. They are not individuals, again, as we anticipate, who identify themselves as organizers. To date, the Commission has called individuals who have identified themselves as organizers, and this is a different perspective and one that we anticipate exploring. And then the second point, Mr. Commissioner, is that there has been evidence given by police witnesses about the measured responses in terms of ending the protests in the red zone in Ottawa. Some of these matters have been before the Commission and prior to today without objection.
Okay. Thank you. Any further submissions by anyone? I'm being very generous about submission time,
Just one more, sir, and I just want to emphasize,
but don't repeat though.
I'm not going to repeat.
I always worry when someone says, I'm going to emphasize.
I'll take it back. I'm going to point out that, when it's with the commission under the Inquiry Act and its provincial equivalents, it is an inquiry and it has different rules, and it's much more liberal when it comes to the permitting of evidence. And though I understand my friend's argument, there is many more remedies available for a breach of the rule of Brown and Dunn if you find that it had occurred than not permitting the evidence. And I would submit simply that the least intrusive remedy in the truth-seeking function of this commission would be to allow the evidence and on whatever terms you see just. Thank you.
Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, I'm going to allow the panelists to go ahead. On Mr. Michkowski's first point about whether the information is relevant, I think there is certainly evidence that it may be, I haven't heard it, but it may be relevant as to the use of the Emergency Act, and in particular the notices that have apparently there's lots of evidence were circulated as recently as this morning. So the use of the notices, the setting up of exclusion zones is squarely within the mandate. And therefore, I think the information may well be relevant. I also note that there has been evidence of police as to the fact that the protest was ended in an orderly manner and quite properly. I believe Inspector Bowden talked about that. I believe another witness, maybe Chief Bell, talked about the fact it was ended without burning of police cars, etc. So the manner of ending is relevant, and this may go to some degree. I think there was also cross-examination or in I believe of Inspector Bernier as to the arrangements that were made and the processing, how the processing was done. So there is evidence about how the operation, if you like, was carried out, including how the detainees were treated and the system arranged. Now, having said that, the impact and relevance diminishes to a point where it in fact becomes questionable as we get further from the use of the Emergency Act notice, etc., because this commission is not mandated to deal with arrests that were or were not done in accordance with the appropriate police procedures and so on. That's a matter for civil or criminal courts if there have been issues in that regard. So I think it moves quite, I would say, of marginal relevance, if any, to what the commission is doing when you talk about the actual manner of arrest, as opposed to what I've described that is more squarely in the relevance. So having said that, I'm not prepared to accept that this panel is not relevant. I expect the accent will be on what I have set out is clearly relevant and what's related to that. And obviously there'll be some context. Context has been provided by other witnesses sometimes, And while I may hear that, it may not become an issue that I have to deal with. Now, on the second point, the procedural fairness point, I have some concern about that because obviously it is, as I've said many times, and I'm going to repeat it, the public wants to get to the bottom of this. And that means fair to all parties. And I am concerned that there may be unfairness to the to some of the parties, in particular the police forces, whether it be the OPP or the OPS, or in fact to former Chief Slowly or anyone else. So fairness is front and center in my concerns. And if after we hear this evidence, there's a need to call further evidence, we've said we would sit evenings and we will sit Saturdays. We will get the information that the public needs to know and that will lead to a fair treatment for all. But I guess that's my ruling. Now, if you want something more formal in writing, I'm happy to do it. But since the panel is here waiting and we all want to make sure we fully use our Friday, I thought I'd give my ruling. Now, if any party wants it in writing and expanded upon, I'm happy to do that. But I think that sets out really my thinking in a general way. And with respect to whether we will have another panel or another witness, I think that's something we can deal with after the evidence is heard. With respect to the videos, I'm a bit concerned about the videos. I haven't seen them. And I would hope we're not going to get too far afield of what's relevant to the issues I need to deal with. And I don't mean to minimize any issues about how an arrest was carried out. Those are obviously significant to individuals involved, including the officers, but that's not central. In fact, is more anecdotal, I think, in terms of what this commission is dealing with. But it is part of the record so far, some of the evidence relating to that. So that's that. It'll be in the transcript, but expanded upon, I mean.
Sir, I don't believe the witness chair and desk are set up for two witnesses right now. They need to get another mic as well as another
Okay,
chair.
well, we'll take 5 minutes then to set up the panel. Okay, next are the convoy organizers.
Good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner. Good afternoon, Chris and Maggie. My name is Bath-Shéba Vandenberg, and I'm counsel representing Freedom Corps and the Protestors. I'd like to start by asking you, Chris, a few questions about what happened to you on that Friday, February the 18th, 2022. I understand that you were wearing your medals when you were arrested. Is that correct?
I was.
And did they get damaged when you were arrested?
They did. The first 20 minutes, I had my medals in my jacket, and with the shoving with the police, at one point, one of my medals, my Queen Jubilee medal, broke off, and I lost it.
Could I call up HRF 401566?
Just to perhaps there are a lot of documents, obviously. David Michikowski, sorry, for the Ottawa Police. Perhaps before my friend introduces one of the documents, she could just confirm whether it was something that was uploaded last night for the first time. I know there are 7 videos that were sent to me last night that were not on the system. So if we could just indicate for the record whether that is one of those documents, because I may have specific objection to that.
Okay, given the late disclosure apparently. Could you make sure you tell us beforehand what it is we're going to?
Thank
Just so
you.
we can, if there are problems, we can outline them in detail.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, I can confirm to my friend that I'm going to refer to a video that was presented in the document list by the commission. And it is a video of the arrest of Chris Deary.
Just so that we're clear, that would be what was produced in the last couple days, correct?
No, it was produced a while ago, my friend, and it was produced as part of the list by the commission.
Okay, we'll address that later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, the numbers again for this video are HRF. Okay, you got it. Thank you.
That's a wounded veteran. Yes, sir. That's a wounded warrior right there. They got killed.
Okay, we can pause the video. Thank you. Chris, can you confirm that that is you that's being thrown to the ground and beaten by the police?
Yes, it is.
Hey, I'm not sure about that question. Let's be a little careful with how we do that, please.
Can you confirm that's you, Chris?
Excuse me?
Can you confirm that is you in the video?
It is me.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask you, Maggie, a few questions about what happened to you on Saturday, February the 19th, 2022. And I'd like to bring up a document. This is a video that I did disclose yesterday, and it's a video of it's a photo. It's a photo of when Maggie was kneeling in front of the police.
David Michkowski for the Ottawa Police. For the reasons I've already articulated, that should not be allowed. These are things that should have been disclosed long ago, and we've had no explanation. I get it, sometimes things come up at the last minute, but we've had no explanation for why this was not disclosed.
Okay, well, let's see what the photo, if it's just a photo of Ms. Hope Braun kneeling, is that all it is?
That's all it is, and Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, I'm not sure what the prejudice would be, but let's go ahead.
And the number for that photo is HRF 00001612. Just confirming to the right in the green jacket, that's you kneeling?
Yes, and the charter is in front of me, and there's several people also kneeling and praying,
Thank you.
or doing however they're.
Okay. Now I'd like to call up a video, and this is a video of the arrest of Maggie, and she spoke about it, and I think it is important, Mr. Commissioner, that everyone here sees it. It's simply a video of what she already described and put into evidence.
David Michkowski for the Ottawa Police. I understand that is one of the videos that was disclosed last night as well.
That's correct, and it's also a video that was available to the public at large via the newspapers.
And can you, for the record, explain why it is these things weren't disclosed till last night?
Sir, if I may pop in, unlike some of the institutional individuals and representations here, we of course have no control over witnesses. They approach us. We get put in contact with them. We get the evidence when we get the evidence, and we put it before you as quickly as possible. These witnesses have no connection to us as a party. They were folks that were heard about and were asked to put in contact with. This is how that works, sir. It just unfortunately didn't happen until I believe we even got here in Ottawa, sir.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. Are you saying you didn't get this video till yesterday?
I understand that there was essentially, maybe Beth Vandenberg can explain the background, but at the end of the day, I think we provided it as soon as we could. We didn't have reference to it per se. I'll let Ms. Vandenberg speak to it.
Yes, Ms. Commissioner, that's correct, as I did only have notice of it yesterday, and I tried my very best to share it with everyone as soon as possible.
Okay, well, let's have a look at it and see where we go.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. The numbers for this video are HRF 401614. And Mr. Clerk, I'm going to ask you to pause at 2 seconds. So to play the video and then pause at 2 seconds. Thank you. Maggie, can you confirm that that is you in the green jacket and the blue toque?
It's me.
Thank you. Do you agree that the meaning, because I'm going to go into, we're going to actually just, let's continue playing the video. Pause, please. All right. Do you agree that that appears to be a snatch and grab method? Snatch and grab meaning
Sorry.
snatching and grabbing?
Firstly, this is a little bit leading, which I don't think you're entitled to do. Number two, I'm not sure this is a witness who can talk about police tactics, and I think now you're getting into something that's a bit unfair. So, I mean, you don't have much time. In fact, you have 1 minute left, so you might want to use it more appropriately.
I would like to call up another video, unless I'm going to get ejected to and lose another minute of my time. It's a video of Maggie being arrested.
I'm not sure this is really very relevant to what I have to decide, how the arrests were actually carried out and where there were
Okay.
no complaints. Now, if that's how you want to use your last minute, I'm prepared to have a look at it.
I did want to ask a question for the both of you, just to confirm that after you were arrested, that you were driven outside the Ottawa City Core and told by the police that you...
That's pretty leading for a phase you're not supposed to be leading your witness.
Were you driven outside of the...
That's,
Sorry.
if you want to ask, the way to ask, I'm happy to assist. It's you ask, how was it what proceeded after you were arrested? Where were you taken?
Chris, can you
So
tell us what proceeded after you were arrested?
I believe last time we spoke, so when the processing line was finished, after the 2 hours of staying in the freezing cold, not able to sit or kneel, ended on my medication again. I had my information taken. I was then placed in the back of a squad car. They read me what I was being charged with, which was public obstruction and mischief. So I said I understood. The police officer then left his vehicle for 5 minutes. He came back and he said, "Well, today's your lucky day. You're not being charged." I said, "That's great." I said, "Can I know why that changed?" He said, "No, you don't need to know that." So at that time, I felt it was my understanding that I'm free to go because I'm not being charged with anything. Then the next 5-10 minutes, they put me in a paddy wagon with no direction. They didn't say anything. They said, "Go in here." So again, I mean, I have no choice. I go to the paddy wagon. I'm there for 25 minutes. I don't know where I'm going. Don't know how long I'm there. Eventually, the paddy wagon does fill up over the next couple of hours. Then they drive us around for approximately half an hour to 45 minutes. It's very hard to tell because there's no windows, of course, in the paddy wagon. There's no concept of time. They then drove us to a public works building that was 10.2 kilometers away from Parliament Hill. when they let us out of the paddy wagons, they gave us our possessions back. They gave us no paperwork. The police officer came out and gave us a stern warning and said, you don't come back to Ottawa or you'll be charged. They gave us all our possessions back. Again, sorry. Most of us, due to the cold, our cell phones had died. No one had any money. No one had any masks. We couldn't go into the building to make a phone call. So we were stranded. So we were forced to walk to a Wendy's that was, and I forget the approximate distance. So we had to walk from the Public Works building in the snow, in the freezing cold, to a Wendy's. I had called a friend that I had just met prior the night on the 17th. I met someone for 5 minutes, and he said, if you need anything in Ottawa, and this is the type of people you met in Ottawa. I met him for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and he said, if you need anything, you call me and I'll pick you up right away and whatever. And he did exactly that. I picked him up. I called him at Wendy's. I said, can you please pick us up? We have no money. We have no means. We don't know where we are. We're not from Ottawa. It was just, I never thought that I would get dumped out of the city like trash by the police. It was.
And Mr. Commissioner,
That you're way over your time.
thank you. I was just going to ask if the same thing had happened to Maggie, just to confirm.
I'll be very brief. So when, after I was behind the police line, it's all in my statement, that's there, but I was thrown to the ground and there was a lot of weaponry around, and I looked up and there was a gun pointed, it appeared to be at my head. And from there, I was taken outside the city and dropped off. And again, I was at a towing place where they were towing the trucks, and there was no shelter. There was no place to plug in your phone. There was nothing. And thankfully, people came and got us. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before I go to Commission Counsel, Ms. Bath-Shéba Vandenberg, normally the convoy would be last because you're the ones who, they're your witnesses. So, which is why you can't cross-examine, but normally you come last. So since I took you or you were taken out of order, I'll give you a little more time if you would like to wrap up. Pardon me?
If it's okay, I'll just wrap up for Ms. Vandenberg.
That's fine.
Okay, hello?
Hello?
Okay, and so I just want to ask you a couple of questions about some of your other observations. You saw.
Short wrap up.
Yeah, so you saw the videos that my friend put up on there.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, and she asked you some questions about your opinions on them. Other than those incidents, and first it wasn't asked, did you observe those events that were in those videos?
Some of them, but not the majority of them. There's a lot of streets that I didn't see. So.
Right, and two of the photos in there, one had a Confederate battle flag, the other had a Nazi flag. Did you see any such flags while you were in Ottawa?
No, never.
Okay.
No.
All right, and what, if any, conversations did you have with other protesters that you might classify as racist or misogynist or any form of things that you thought were inappropriate? Did you have any such conversations, either of you?
Never. It was full of love, unity, joy. It was the best time after the last 2 years that we had had. It was incredible.
Did any of them
I
call
didn't have
for
either.
the overthrowing of the government of Canada by violence?
No.
No.
Did any of them ever call for violence at all?
No.
No.
Did you see anything with respect to destruction of property?
No.
No.
Thank you. For the record, Brendan Miller, Mr. Bulford, I'm counsel to the Freedom Corp, who is the entity representing the protesters that were in this city in February and January of 2022. Good evening. Commissioner, just for ease of reference, what I'm continuing to do now, just to get to the point, your counsel have been excellent in adducing evidence in chief, and I'm just going to deal with examination from the questions that arose from the other parties. And so I'll try and be quicker now for you. So
You won't hear many complaints, I think, from the hall on that, but
thank you very much.
it's, of course, you're entitled to your
Yes,
time.
I just think it's helpful. So there's a couple things, and there will be a couple documents that arose that are in the system already from my friend's questioning I want to put to you. But the first thing I'd like to ask you about, Mr. Bulford, is Parliament Protection Services. This is, of course, to most Canadians, a sort of police service that nobody understands and nobody knows much about. What can you tell me about it?
Well, after the October 22nd, 2014 shooting at the War Memorial and Mr. Bibeau storming the center block, there was a big review afterwards that took place because there was 3 different agencies that were responsible for security on Parliament Hill. And they were all amalgamated into the Parliamentary Protective Service so that they would have one cohesive unit for the precinct.
Right. And can you tell me, who does the Parliament Protection Services, who does it answer to?
Well, when I was working, I still believe they fell under the RCMP's command, but that may not be the case anymore. They may be completely independent now.
Right. And the RCMP command, then that falls under Commissioner Lucky.
That's correct.
And is it fair to say that from what you've seen from being within the RCMP and seeing it on the news, that you've witnessed or heard of Commissioner Lucky relaying public messages on behalf of the elected executive branch, or relaying information that the political executive branch wants to relay to the public?
Yes.
Okay. So the next question I want to bring up, if I can bring up document 7722 underscore rel.0001.
Council, are you referring to text messages?
The text messages, yes. So it's going, and I'll have to get the other one too. So it's 7724 is the next one, just so you know. Now, I'm not sure if you were present or you had watched this part of the hearing when I referred to these text messages. This is a text exchange between one of the staffers with the Prime Minister's office and another one of the staffers with the Minister of Public Safety's office, okay? And this is, in this context, the staffer with the Prime Minister's office states to the staffer with the Public Safety Minister's office that got a quick response, people are into it, let me know if your boss is too, boss being the Minister of Public Safety. Happy to help however I can. This is what I sent through, by the way. Hi, I just had a chat with Alex at PS, being Public Safety, who had a bit of an interesting idea. As you saw in the pod goals chat, the trucker convoy and some of their more extreme comments calling for January 6th style insurrection are getting more coverage in the media. Alex was surveying whether there would be some interest in his boss doing some media on this eventually. He was chatting with Mendicino about it right before he went into a cabinet retreat. And can you agree the cabinet retreat was on January 24th? Were you aware of that?
That sounds accurate.
Yeah, of 2002. And there he goes on. I think there could be an opportunity to get in on this growing narrative of the truckers, particularly with the research that LRB is doing into their backers. Do you know who the LRB is?
No.
Have you ever heard of the Liberal Research Bureau while you were on the Hill?
No.
Okay. And my thoughts of framing here would be similar to what the PM/Blair, being Minister Blair and the Prime Minister, said last year when January 6th occurred. And the first point is our democracy is something we need to nurture and protect every day. And then if we could bring up the second part of the text message at 7724. And then it goes on, and this is the points that are being relayed or that is essentially going to be the narrative. We will always support the right to peaceful protest, and some of the calls that organizers of these events are making are concerning and will take them seriously, would need something to back this up. We'll continue to monitor the situation closely. The fine line to walk would be to ensure we are not looking like we're directing the police, which obviously is not the goal here. Hoping to canvass your thoughts, Alex said he'd come back to me with a proposal this afternoon when he gets to chat with Mendocino again. Obviously, pending his bosses and our interests in looking into this further. So that text is to either the Prime Minister or someone within his office. And they're explaining what Alex, the Chief of Staff for the Public Safety Minister, has come up with. And he responds, thanks. I had an initial chat with my boss and he's supportive, but wants to wait a day or two. There's a danger that if we come down too hard, they might push out the crazies, being, I think, the far extreme fractions online they were talking about. I think that's fair. She responds, apparently Global and others are working on stories. Maybe we see how those land. So you had mentioned that you don't trust legacy media and you mentioned Global News, and that's one of them.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Now, I've sent this around. I'm not going to try and move this article into evidence at this juncture. But did you know that the following day, Global released a news article titled January 6th event, or that there was going to be a potential January type 6th event on during the Ottawa Convoy. And they managed to get Parliament Protection Services to comment. And what was reiterated was one of the points in that text message. So again, I'm asking you, if the government was going to try and relay a narrative, from your experience from working on the Hill and law enforcement, would they use something like the Parliamentary Protection Services to relay a narrative?
I can't say for certain. All of my experience with the Parliamentary Protective Service is I've never seen anything political from them because they're limited in scope.
Okay. And so the Parliamentary Protective Services reiterate, and I'll just read it in. I'm just trying to pull it up again.
I'm not sure you got much from the witness about the parliamentary.
Right. So in any event, I'll deal with that.
There are going to be lots of witnesses that will come
Understood.
later.
Understood. So
you can use your time, but
yeah. So moving on, essentially the Parliamentary Protective Services in this article states that they're wary of the security and they won't talk about further matters in order to keep people safe. I'm just summarizing it. We'll put it into evidence through other witnesses. But is it concerning to you that, you know, coming from this issue with misinformation that you're concerned about and you've testified to, that the elected executive branch has identified knowing about news articles and what they're going to be about before they come out? And then
what's the evidence of that?
directly in the text messages, they said that Global's running a piece on it. It was on January 24th, of which that was, and the news article I'm speaking of was on January 25th. And then Parliamentary Security Services says essentially the byline that is in those text messages, sir. And I'll put that into evidence, and I'm just asking if it concerns him if that's the case. That's
I'm
it.
just trying to understand where the evidence is for that.
Yes, it's the text messages. So you have the text messages between the staffers with both the Prime Minister's office as well as with the Minister of Public Safety.
Yes.
They then say what the narrative is going to be. They then say that Global is going to be running this story. And then when Global runs the story, they quote Parliamentary Protective Services, citing basically one of the lines in the text messages, sir.
I'm not sure I understand the link at all in the way you describe it, but the record is clear, so we'll
Yes.
leave it.
So with respect to that, if that is the case, is that something that concerns you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And moving on from that point, my friend brought up with you the issue with respect to danger of people staying and the advice you were giving and everything. And I'd like to bring up OPS document 14504, please. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
It's the document that the OPP and 2 OPS liaisons brought to the Swiss Hotel.
Right. And in reviewing that document, does any of it therein say that all the protesters have to leave?
No.
All right. And so was that one of the documents that formed your understanding of what was to happen?
I thought it was just reinforcing Justice McLean's decision that as long as we abided by those 3 conditions of no one coming to Ottawa to commit violence, do not block critical infrastructure, and do not disrupt trade, we were still considered a lawful protest. And the people that they were delivering that message to, such as myself and the others, didn't fit into any of those categories that I'm reading here.
Right. And with respect to the position therein that says they need to move their trucks, you're not contesting that that was going to have to happen?
No.
Okay. And so when you talk about lawful protest, you're talking about people, actually physical people, human beings on a street protesting. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. And so it was your belief and you were advising Canadians to come to Ottawa or to stay in Ottawa in order to carry out that sort of protest?
I hate to, it's David Michikowski. I hate to spend more time on Friday evening of everyone, but we really are getting into cross-examination.
That's fine. I'll move on.
More of leading questions, Paul Champ on the record.
Thanks.
Pretty leading.
So if we could please bring up OPP document 4286. Okay, so this is the document that my friend put to you. It's the operational plan. And if Mr. Clark wouldn't mind scrolling down to page 31. It's not 31 in the documents. Oh no, it is. There we go. Perfect. So if you can just take a moment to look at that, Mr. Bulford. It's a script for arresting for arresting protesters.
Okay.
All right, so you can agree the plan is that the protesters were essentially going to be released with just a court date and some release conditions as soon as possible. They weren't being put before a justice of the peace or a bail hearing. That was the plan?
Yes.
All right. And so other than Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, do you know of anyone else this plan just wasn't applied to? Where they just got a promise to appear with conditions, undertakings, and they didn't get massive bail conditions imposed upon them by the Crown or on behalf of OPS. Do you know anyone else other than those 2 individuals who wasn't released under this sort of release plan?
Well, I know of at least Pat King.
Yeah.
And his friend, I believe his name is Tyson Billings.
Yeah.
Were both incarcerated for an extended period of time.
Was anybody else that you know of?
I've heard of other people that were charged, but I don't know the particulars of their release.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe and press that notification button to receive more information like this. You can also follow me at yellowhead.vote to stay informed and get the inside scoop. Thank you.